All right, I'm about to go live with the new Community Oversight Study Committee for East Lansing. And we're going to start here in a quick minute with the official kickoff, meeting number 1. About to kick off the new Oversight East Independent Oversight Review Panel for police here in the city, and this is our very first meeting to establish creating that commission. Stay tuned.
Ellsworth Etchison and Sharon Reed Davis. Oh, there's Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. How's everyone?
So, there's only one person out there yet.
Has Sade come on? 2, Sade and Sharon Reed Davis.
Bert, if you'd like, I could get it turned on and we can get things started.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
This just makes it live.
This
Right?
meeting is being recorded.
Yes, that's correct.
So the meeting is live now. So it's 6 o'clock. I'm George Lahannis, I'm the city manager. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate your participation. This is kind of an unusual situation because we have no chair. I'm just going to start the meeting until we get to the appointment of the chair, and then the chair will take over the meeting from that point. So I'll just go ahead and call for a roll call. So I have to call a roll for the commission members.
Sure. First person on the list is Sade Callwood. Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Okay.
Noel Garcia Jr. Chuck Grigsby.
Present.
Cedric Haro.
Present.
Helen Josephson. Sharon Reed Davis. Chris Root. Present. Quentin Tyler.
Present.
Eric Williams. I see you, Eric, but you're muted, so I didn't hear a response.
I'm here.
Thank you. Tanya Williams. Present. John Bacon.
Present.
Steve Gonzalez.
And you can leave off staff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And
I'll
then,
second.
Sade Callwood showed up. I don't know if you were here during when your name was called, but or Sadie Callwood. How do you say
Oh,
it?
there she is.
It's Sade.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is roll call. Next is approval of the agenda. Obviously, we have a pretty brief agenda tonight, really organizational items. Anyone have want to make a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Motion made by Williams, second by Helen. Is that? I didn't catch you.
Can I suggest that we add something?
Certainly.
An item having to do with how we deal with public comments.
So when we get to public comment, what we were going to suggest is just having a, like all of the virtual meetings, have between 2, 3, or even longer minute restriction on comments. And then the board could pass that at that point if they want. But what was your suggestion, a time limit or some other point regarding public comment?
I was suggesting that maybe we should, at least in future meetings, have public comments at the beginning rather than the end of the meeting. Something that somebody might say might be relevant to our discussion. That was what I was going to suggest.
Sure. Other items, we should call for a vote to approve the agenda. All yeas? All those yeses?
Aye.
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 And then all no? Okay. So the motion, the agenda is approved, and we can look at the portion of communication for the next meeting. Next, we'll just do an introduction so that people know who's around the table or the virtual table. Obviously, to help people in terms of knowing everyone's background. So, why don't we just start with the board members and go down the list, or I can just call from the list I have in front of me if people prefer that. Cedric, do you want to give us a brief introduction?
Sure. So I was born and raised in New York, kind of the kind of kid that ran from cops, and eventually wound up at Michigan State getting my PhD in criminal justice, and just never left the state of Michigan. So I did my dissertation on police use of force, and now at Adrian College, where I'm a professor, I teach all of our introductory courses in sociology and criminal justice, and then all of our policing courses.
Thank you. Welcome. Chris Root.
Hello. I've lived in East Lansing for about 37 years. I came here from Washington, D.C. I worked in Washington at a nonprofit organization concerned about U.S. policy towards Southern Africa. When I first came here, I worked for the legislature for 2 years. I've been following police issues in East Lansing for about 4 years. I guess leave it at that.
Chuck Grigsby.
Hi, thank you. Chuck Grigsby, obviously. I've been in East Lansing for about 4.5 years. I'm just a community busybody. I sit on the Human Relations Commission, and I have a family. My wife and my son reside in Michigan. Thank you.
Eric Williams.
I've lived in East Lansing for about 20 years, and before that, I lived in Lansing for about 20 years. I work for the state in the agency that deals with people who have professional licenses from the state, and I kind of got interested in the way police are regulated through that. Since, they don't seem to be regulated at all the way the doctors and nurses are.
Helen Josephson.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm a criminal justice student at Michigan State University. So I don't come from East Lansing, I come from Clarkston, Michigan. But I'm a junior here, so we're going on my 3rd year living in East Lansing. I work at the Michigan State University Police Department as a parking officer, student supervisor. So that's kind of my background that pertains to this.
Welcome. Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Greetings, everyone. I am the Chief Marketing and Chief Diversity Officer for LabQ. I'm from Pontiac, Michigan. I've been in the Lansing region for 30 plus years. Moved back to East Lansing. When I say back, I came here in the 80s, was living in East Lansing, moved out to the south side of Lansing, moved back here about 5 years ago. And I've been most interested here in the last probably year or so in getting involved in some meaningful conversation, policy change, as I myself have been profiled. And so this is why I'm most interested in being part of the solution. I don't like to bring forth problems without being part of the solution, which is why I'm interested in this committee.
Okay, thank you. Noel Garcia.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Noel Garcia, a retired lieutenant with the Lansing Police Department. I retired about 7 years ago for a whole weekend and moved into my new job, which I'm currently in as the law enforcement instructor at the Wilson Talent Center, teaching juniors and seniors, some of which are East Lansing students. Those are interested in getting in the field of law enforcement. I'm also adjunct at Baker College, Wausau, Ferris State, and Michigan State as well. Quickly, I've been a resident for East Lansing 6 years, but my boys, twin boys, 13-year-old twin boys, have been students at East Lansing for 10. We lived in DeWitt, my then wife and I lived in DeWitt 10 years ago, and wanted more diversity for our family. And so we did school of choice, and we brought our boys to this school. They're now 8th graders, big 8th graders at McDonald Middle School. And I have an undergraduate and graduate degree from Michigan State in criminal justice. I did a lot of work on recruitment and retention efforts for Lansing Police Department, diversifying the workforce. I've done work in revamping our disciplinary process at Lansing Police Department, that of a matrix system that's still in place today. So I'm excited to be among all of you, some very talented people, and look forward to working with you in the future here.
Thank you. Welcome. Quentin Tyler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Quentin Tyler. So I lived in the East Lansing community about 2.5 to 3 years. This is my year 3 at Michigan State. I came from where I was in Kentucky for about 19 years or so there. Again, at Michigan State, I'm the associate dean and director of diversityandinclusion, and also acting associate dean of Oversight at the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and also community relations. So glad to be here.
Welcome. Tanya Williams.
Hi, good evening. So I come here as a former East Lansing police officer. I spent 6 years serving the citizens of East Lansing. I find that coming from both sides of the coin, one, I've been profiled living up north in a small town called Cadillac, and then also being a police officer and kind of seeing the inner workings of that. I wanted to make sure that I was able to make a difference in the community that I really actually love serving so much. So that is where I'm here.
Welcome. Shanae Callwood.
Hello, my name is Shanae Callwood. I am a psychologist. I'm currently living in Massachusetts. When I originally signed up to be on this committee, I was living in East Lansing, completing my doctoral internship at Michigan State. I've since moved given COVID. I completed my doctoral project on young Black men's experiences of aggressive policing, and I thought that this would be right up my alley, so that's why I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Sharon Reed Davis. Did we see if Sharon got on the call? Maybe I missed her. Maybe by phone. So I think that's all of our committee members. All of our committee members who are present introduce themselves, and we'll jump right over to our council liaison. So, okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ron Bacon. This commission is definitely the reason why I'm even here right now. This is a really high place of interest for me. In my background, my undergraduate is also in criminal justice. My minor's in sociology, and then my master's is in organizational leadership. I am really in tune to what's going on in policing. I work with young people. I'm a football coach. I've been a football coach around all of Greater Lansing for about 15 years. Been a part of this community for, I've lost track, somewhere between 10, 11, 12. I lost track on that one. New to council. I'm excited to work with everyone on here. And I was thinking about this subject earlier today. I think most importantly, that we work together and work under the assumption that everybody's experiences are true. And that they're not all going to align, but they are true. And if we work from that assumption, I think we'll have an opportunity to get something done here. My worst fear is not that we don't get the exact thing done that everyone wants. It would be that we don't get anything done. So I really want us to work together to get something done. We owe it to the community to deliver something good for the community. And I think it's a big responsibility, and I hope we all feel the weight of that. I do exceptionally. I feel like it's the most important thing that I've done, or that probably ever will do on council, is what we're trying to achieve here. And this could be a model both for a region and the state and for the nation. It's important work. So I'm here to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Next, let's go to staff with our new chief. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Kim Johnson. I'm the new chief of police at East Lansing Police Department. I've been on the job for a week, so I'm getting acclimated with that. I came from Detroit, Michigan, where I was born and raised. I came to Michigan State University back in the early 80s. Got hired on East Lansing. I worked at East Lansing Police Department from officer all the way up to captain. I worked there for 30 years. I retired in 2012, and I've been doing a bunch of teaching for Northwestern University, organizational leadership, and been a golf coach for Lansing Catholic School. And so I've returned to the police field, to the city that I love also. So I'm excited to be a part of this going forward.
Steve Gonzalez, our deputy chief. Steve.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Steve Gonzalez. I'm the deputy chief at East Lansing. I've been with the department as a police officer for just shy of 23 years now, and have been in the deputy chief role since 2017. I have a bachelor's degree in Homeland Security and a master's degree in Emergency and Disaster Management. So I look forward to working with this group and providing the support and information that everybody is going to need.
Thank you, Steve. And then we have Diane. Diane, you want to?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Schaefer. I celebrated 10 years with East Lansing Police on August 23rd. Longest I've ever been in any job ever. I support people that work in police administration. So Kim Johnson, Steve Gonzalez, Captain Conley, and Anna Park up in police admin. And I'm here to help you with whatever you need from an administrative standpoint.
Thank you, Diane. Justin, do you want to turn your camera on, give us a hello and who you are?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Justin Drinky. I am a community event specialist for the city, and recently have taken on the responsibilities of supporting many of the city's boards and commissions with facilitating the technology behind the scenes. So if you have any technical issues joining any of these meetings, let me know. You'll be receiving the invites to the meetings from me for these meetings.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. Blaine Hardy.
Mouse got away from me. I couldn't unmute. Good evening. I'm Elaine Hardy. George, I hope that it is okay if you would allow me an opportunity to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day and to acknowledge our occupation of the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fires Confederacy of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples on land that was ceded in the Treaty of Saginaw in 1819. We recognize, support, and affirm the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 indigenous nations, the historic indigenous communities, and individuals who were forcibly removed from this land by broken treaty. We acknowledge their immutable spiritual and physical connection to this land and lands throughout this country. Again, I'm Elaine Hardy. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Administrator for the City of East Lansing.
Thank you, Elaine. And then we have Shelley Newman, our Human Resource Director.
Hi, everybody. As George said, I'm Shelley Newman. I'm the HR director with the city. I've been with the city for 23 years. Graduated from MSU in undergrad and graduate degree. And one of the things that I do in my role is serve as the city's chief negotiator at the bargaining table with all of our unions.
Thank you, Shelley. And I think people don't know me. I'm George Lahannis. I'm the city manager for the city of East Lansing. I've been city manager for about 8 years now. I've been with the city for 22 years, about 25 years in public sector management. I've got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a minor in English, and a master's degree in public administration. And, Also have continuing coursework in grad school at Michigan State Labor and Industrial Relations program. So early in my career, I was a human resources director, director of administrative services for the city of East Lansing. So I've held a number of positions in East Lansing. So with that, I think everyone can see we've got a great group of folks here, a lot of expertise, a lot of varied backgrounds. So I think you can see why everyone here was selected, which is actually why I wanted to start off with that, so people can know who you're serving with. Obviously, the commission members are the voting members of this. Staff, myself, police, diversity, equity, city, and human resources are here to assist you with staff support. Diane and Justin are here with administrative support to help you with minutes, agendas, technology, and so on. The rest of us, police, myself, human resources, are here to help you with any research, information, questions, background, anything of that you need over the coming months to do your job. We're here to assist you with that. And of course, Councilmember Bacon is here to assist in his role as a council liaison. So he's not a voting member, he is a council liaison here to assist you in contact with council. So that's who we all are and why we're all here. With that, I'm going to move to appointing the chair. So I'm going to run the election for chair. Once that person is elected, they will take over and run the election of vice chair. Of course, I'll help them with information on Robert's rules or anything like that. No one needs to be an expert in Robert's rules of order. Don't let that change your mind about serving. We will get through it. Just trying to run the meeting. So with that, I will open the nominations for chair. I'll jump in.
I would like to nominate Noel.
Nomination of Noel. Okay, there doesn't need to be a second, is my understanding, for a nomination, but we will keep the nominations open to see if anyone else wants to serve as chair. So Noel Garcia nominated for chair. Anyone else? Any more nominations? And you can nominate yourself under Robert's rules, or you can nominate someone else. Of course, if someone does not want to serve, they don't have to serve, but you can nominate someone else or yourself. Any other nominations for chair?
Nominate Chuck.
Eric Williams nominates Chuck Grigsby for chair. So we have Noel and we have Chuck for chair. Any other nominations? Going for the final.
I nominate Quentin.
Quentin, okay. And then before I do this, I'm going to ask everyone if they're willing to serve. So we're just going to take nominations, and I'm going to double back with all of you and make sure you're willing to do it, because we don't want to nominate someone who says, I don't want to do it. So it's pretty easy just to at that point. So we've got nomination of Noel, Chuck, and Quentin at this point. Any other nominations before we close nominations? Anyone? Okay. Now, are any of those gentlemen who were requested or nominated not willing to serve? Because then they would pull you out. Because we don't want to do it. We don't want to force you to do that. Anyone not willing to serve as chair? So, I'm going to go in the order. Let me just tell you how the election will run. We'll go in the order by which they were nominated. Everyone will get one vote, and you can have one vote per person. So I will first say, I'm not saying it right now, so don't vote. I will first say, everyone voting yes for Mr. Garcia. People will vote and tell me their votes. I will tally them up. Then I will say, anyone voting yes for Mr. Grigsby, we vote, we tally them up. Anyone voting yes for Mr. Tyler, we vote, we tally them up. At the end, hopefully we have a majority, and we can say that that person is chair. So you can vote for yourself, of course. That's part of the process here. So that's considered your vote if you want to vote for yourself. So is everyone clear on that? So only one vote per person. We'll start and we'll go through the names, and you tell us the votes. We'll just make sure to count them so we're sure we get the right count. So everyone who wants to vote yes to Noel Garcia as chair.
George?
Yes.
Take a moment of privilege. I'm just curious on nothing to my question would be for Chuck's role as chair of HRC. Is it creating a conflict with being he was elected chair? Seem to have some dual oversight and some points of crossover as we're trying to and make sure it's clean.
I don't think there's any conflict in serving as chair because he was appointed to the commission. So, I mean, he may or may not want to do it because he's chair of HRC and chair here, but that's up to him. I don't think there's a conflict because he was appointed. If he's appointed, then council would envision that he'd be able to vote. So, I don't think there's any particular conflict, but that'd be up to him if he wants to serve or not.
Just making sure it's clean. You got it.
Okay, so is everyone ready to vote? Then I'm going to say all in favor of Noel Garcia as chair. Say aye.
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 So I got a vote from Kelly Ellsworth and a vote from Tanya Williams. And did anyone else not vote? Noel, did you vote?
I have not voted yet. I just have a hard time voting for myself, although I'd be honored. I don't do that, so I appreciate it. I have my vote for someone else.
So that's 2 votes for Noel. Next is Chuck Grigsby. Everyone who wants to vote for Chuck, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that was Emily, Quentin, Josephson, and Harrell voted for Chuck. And Chris.
Yes.
Was that the correct count? Did I miss anybody? Chuck, did you vote?
I didn't vote.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't leaving anybody out.
Well, no,
So,
I know Quentin voted for me, so I mean, it's like, so I don't think I need to vote.
so finally, and that was 5 people, correct? I'm not reading my notes here.
5.
Yes.
Aye.
And then finally, Quentin Tyler.
Aye.
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 2. That was yes from Noel Garcia and yes from Sade. And yes from Chuck. So that's 3. Okay. So unless I missed it, Chuck Grigsby is appointed chair. Correct? Okay. Chuck, at this point, congratulations, you can take over and run the meeting from this point. Obviously, any assistance you need, give us a holler right here. And then I would just say that you can run the vice chair process at this point.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for having confidence in me in running this meeting and future meetings going forward. I really don't take that lightly. So please, if I do mess up, don't fail to interrupt me and correct me as we go along. No worries at all. So I think we now are at the point where we're going to open it up for nominations for vice chair. And just like we did for the previous vote, we'll open it up for nominations first. Is anyone interested in nominating themselves or someone else for vice chair?
I would like to nominate Sade.
Is it okay if I call commissioners by the first name as I get to know you? Would that be okay? Because I will fumble with the last name. So Commissioner Tanya has nominated Sade for vice chair. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? As the Commissioner Cedric, you nominated who? I'm sorry.
Tanya Williams.
Commissioner Cedric has nominated Tanya. Commissioner Tanya as vice chair. Are there any other nominations? As chair, do I get to nominate someone?
You can nominate somebody because you get a vote like everybody else. So I believe you can nominate somebody.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I would like to nominate Christine Root. It's my nomination for vice chair. So are there any other nominations by any other commissioners? Would anyone like to nominate themselves? All right, thank you. It looks like we have three nominations, side A, Tanya and Christine for vice chair. And like the previous vote, we will go in order. You get to vote one time for the commissioner you would like to serve. And if you don't mind, Justin, can you help me out to make sure that we get the numbers correct, please?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Did all of the nominees confirm their willingness to serve?
Thank you, Justin. Is there any of the commissioners who were nominated who do not want to serve?
I did speak to Diane. We had some communication. I am no longer in Michigan, so I also don't want to take that spot from anyone. So I think I will just remove myself from the nomination.
Okay, thank you. So Sade is it Sade? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah.
Thank you. And if I do mess up someone else's name, please don't hesitate to correct me. So Sade is removing herself as nominated person for vice chair, and we have now Tanya and Christine remaining, and both of those commissioners, I believe, still want to or entertain the option of serving as vice chair, correct? All right. So just like we did the previous vote, Justin, I think we're clear now. Everyone gets one particular vote, and I'll start with Commissioner Tanya for her nomination for vice chair. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that what you got, Justin?
I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see Chris Root, I think, peeking up on the side of the screen.
Okay. So we have 5. Okay. Officially? 6, excuse me. 6. And all those who would like to nominate Commissioner Christine for vice chair, please say aye by raising your hand. Aye. So that is 4, I believe. Is that correct, Justin?
I'm sorry. I saw Eric raise his hand for Tanya. Were you not trying to raise your hand for Tanya, Eric?
No, for Chris.
Okay, I thought your hand went up the first time. So we had 5 for the first one then, unless I had that wrong.
Okay,
for Tanya.
So in the previous nomination, we had listed 6 nominations, but there was an error, and there was only going to be 5 nominations for Tanya in the previous nod. And now for Christine Root, again, can you please raise your hand and say aye for your nominating Christine Root for vice chair? Aye.
Aye.
I see 4.
We have 4.
Chuck, Eric, Tanya, and Brett. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. I think we have a vice chair. We have Tanya as our vice chair, Williams, as going forward as our vice chair, going with that vote. Is that correct? All right. Moving on to new business. We are going to item 2.1, review of council resolution, discuss a work plan. I would imagine that everyone has had a chance to look at the agenda and look at the resolution that was presented in regards to.
There was a lot of documents sent today, around 12-ish, and not that you know my schedule, but given that I was in Livonia taking my mother to a doctor's appointment and got back just moments before this meeting, I would appreciate moving forward if documents could be sent at least a day in advance to get time to review. I have not reviewed these documents.
Duly noted, Commissioner Kelly. I don't think very many of us had an opportunity to review all that information. It was good information, but I don't think we all had a quite strong opportunity. I had all day to look at some of that stuff, and I didn't get to all through it. So I think that's very understandable, and I think your request going forward is reasonable. City Manager Lahanas, did you have something to say?
It wasn't intended to have that for now. That's a lot of materials that you'll have to look at. So I think the chief was just trying to start dumping all the stuff that you might for reference over a couple of weeks. You won't want to read all that. It's very grievous and such. So you might want to read it over time. but it was not intended that you read it by today at all. We'll try never to do that today. Dump it on to the table. So we'll keep that in mind. But that's going to be the place where we're going to try to put all the large documents that they want to look at and have one place for you. Is that right, Deputy Chief? That's sort of going to be the collection spot for their materials.
That's correct. Just simply because we're in a big virtual format right now, it's easier to try and do it that way than bombard you with emails and attachments and things like that.
You'll need to read that in the short term. You can take your time and read through those materials.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions in regards to the overall resolution, generally before we go into the parts of it? I just want to mention there is a heavy rainstorm here where I'm at. So Vice Chair Tanya, just in case my technology messes up, be ready to go. Sometimes I have a little issues with rain with my internet. So just to let you guys know and gals know in advance. So let's jump right into the resolution. It has quite a bit of specific information for us to kind of really get our hands and heads wrapped around. I really want to open the floor up right now for any of the commissioners as far as open the discussion about really the resolution itself and what it stands for. I'll go ahead and open the floor up if anyone would like to add anything to the conversation.
I think I just want to, kind of jump in there. As I mentioned, I've been in some communication with Diane because I've since moved out of Michigan, and I think it's important, I guess, for us to maybe even go on if the committee as a whole feels as though it's appropriate for me to serve on it, as I am in Massachusetts. I'd still be honored to be part of moving forward, but I can also respect if folks want to kind of keep it within Michigan.
City Manager Lahanis, I don't really know. I think from the way that it's written, there's an issue with her, with where she's at, as long as she's able to make the commitment. Am I mistaken about that?
Yeah, I would think the appointment or non-appointment would be a decision for council because they appointed you. So I believe Councilmember Bacon is aware, and so is the mayor aware of your move, and they requested no change. So at this point, I think that would be the appropriate and not ask the members to vote or not vote, but just say that the council doesn't think you should continue to serve, and I think that's the final answer. Correct, Mr. Bacon?
Yeah, we discussed and just based upon your expertise, obviously, and the other things you were discussing, you just think that you continue to serve. It still works with your schedule.
Okay.
I would just say that we're all virtual. We're in the same place as you right now, and hearing what you have to offer, I certainly want to work with you. So I'm all for you staying on.
And I'll serve that with the caveat, though, if obviously with the state rules changing and open meetings, and if things change and make it impossible to continue virtually, or if something else changes, we maybe would have to make different considerations at that time. But under this format, definitely, it's not an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sade. All right, just moving along. If there's not any more conversation or discussion in regards to the resolution in item 2.1, we'll move forward. I think everyone pretty much has had a chance to kind of really digest that.
So I could just briefly weigh in if you'd like, Chair.
Please.
So one thought that's significant is that the committee took a while to be seated because obviously the virtual format, nothing seems to be easy in format. So appreciate everyone getting together. But this actually, if you know, the time frame for your deliverables starts with today's meeting. So that's great because that means we didn't actually lose 3 months of time to get a product. So you have 6 months from the date of tonight, basically, to produce your report or get some recommendation to council. That obviously really is your deliverable, is a recommendation on an independent police oversight commission and what you would recommend in that. You know, I mentioned before that staff is available for you for your research and would like to hear perhaps now, perhaps at the next meeting, what sorts of things you would like to see as a part of that research in terms of a work plan. So if the group wants to discuss at some point a work plan, I think that would be helpful for staff so we can parcel out our efforts, but how long do you envision for research and review? What types of documents and what types of research from other communities and other policies would you like to see? And then at what point would you like to think that you had your research done and begin putting pen to paper and coming up with draft policies? That's sort of what was envisioned with the work plan discussion, how much time and research and background and sort of groundwork, and at what point would you envision moving forward with a policy. And of course, anything you want from us in terms of research, if you would lay out those documents, we could then go about collecting that information. It could even be, if you want to hear from other commission members of other cities, anything of that nature that you think that will help you in your endeavors to make a recommendation to council. That's what we're here to assist with. If it's in areas of labor relations, we have our human resources director, but we also can have the city's labor council, 312 expert available to consult, provide presentation to the commission. We could have our city attorney if it's areas of charter or organizational oversight related to a public entity like this. All of those things are available to you as a part of your research. So, it's not quite the sky's the limit, but certainly tell us what you want to see and know over the coming months, and we will get that information for you to review, for you to move forward with your recommendation. So that's really all I want you to mention about that. That's what we envisioned with the discussion work plan. And that was all I had, Chair, unless you have something else for me.
No, thank you. I appreciate that clarification and a little bit of structure when it comes to that. I know we all have been sitting for a while trying to get started with this, and I know some of us probably have an idea of what, or at least the initial format of what our work plan could be. And I was wondering, hopefully we can get into a little bit of discussion. So by the time we have our next meeting, we can really have some tangibles to start building upon going forward, and what they maybe foresee in what the work plan may be going forward with the focus of our mandate. Do any of the commissioners have any thoughts or any initial things we should be thinking about when you think about your work plan? Commissioner, Mr. Williams, please.
I can do a lot of things on Google and do research that way. But what I can't do is have access to people very easily. And there are some people with very central roles in this whole process that I would like, as part of this study endeavor, to pick their minds. In fact, I made a list of them, which I think I put in the chat. I don't have access to these people. I can't call them up, and they won't return my calls. But if Mr. Lahanas or Mr.
Can you, Justin, if I may, Justin, can you please? Is it possible for you to pull that chat up for us to see what he has typed in there for everyone?
Everyone can open it just by clicking on the chat in the bottom of their toolbar, and then it pops up. I see the list there.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I definitely would have to second that. How do we get our work done? Do we maybe open this thing up where we have maybe some ad hoc commissions who are focused on certain things with their backgrounds? Are you open to having a mini liaison for your ad hoc commission when you come to that list that you see there? What are your thoughts? Councilmate Member Bacon.
I think I'd recommend, to get started, a lot of people coming in with different levels of understanding. Someone like Noel, who has immense police understanding. I think you need a baseline. So you need a baseline from the organization as it exists right now. You have a new chief, I think your very first presentations we need to know Chief Kim Johnson's vision. We need to know maybe from Deputy Chief what's already being done and what steps are in place so we don't reinvent the wheel. I know there's new rules and things that are coming through MCOLs and things like that through via legislation on continuing education and additional training and those types of things, and then get a baseline on what you have and what we're already doing before we go in on what we want to change. I don't think everyone has the same background in law enforcement or in policing, even as like Chris mentioned, she's been studying for 4 years. I bet some of us people on the call, maybe their first day. I think we need to establish a baseline, maybe with the first, even the next meeting where each person internally presents something to give us, let's establish that, and that buys you time to kind of figure out what you want to change, because I don't think everyone knows yet. So it's something to set some baseline expectations. So.
Thank you, Council Member Bacon. We have Commissioner Cedric, and then we have Commissioner Kelly up next, I saw.
Thank you. So from an academic standpoint, right, one of the things I'm always most interested in is getting as much data as possible. And I know at one of the previous meetings, Mr. Wahanas had mentioned some ongoing data collection efforts where the East Lansing Police Department is partnered with some of, I believe, the faculty at MSU. So if we could, at the very least, find out who those points of contact are, who are the individuals who are already conducting research on whatever issues it may be. So I don't know if those things are related to, for example, the officer-initiated contact report, or just sort of as a baseline, an idea of what data is being collected, who is collecting it, what gets done with that data.
I can jump in quick. So yeah, we're collecting all the data. We talked about doing an academic study because the city of Lansing utilizes an membership backup for that purpose. So I think that this group may want to recommend our future law enforcement. I want to recommend is an externally sort of validated study of what our contact numbers should look like for a community our size and our demographic. So at this point, all the data we have data, but it's in-house collected by us. So I think we're certainly open to doing what Lansing does, which is having an external validation of that.
Actually, George, to your point, I'm working on a task force with a colleague at Michigan State. We identified 3 areas we're looking at Michigan State. One is campus climate, one is policing, and also one is increasing underrepresentation. And she'd be a great person. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Covina. She's leading the one focused on policing. She hasn't been done that. So that's a potential content as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tyler. I believe Commissioner Kelly is up, and then after her, Commissioner Noel. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad that Cedric mentioned data. With I wear 2 hats for LabQ. One is the Chief Diversity Officer, and then one is the Chief Marketing Officer. So as Chief Marketing Officer, I run everything through data, and data is key. And so I'm interested to find out how are you guys collecting data. And so are you collecting data? I mean, is that being recorded every time a police officer pulls someone over? Are they documenting somewhere the gender, the race, or something? So I'm interested in where this data is coming from that's being collected. And so, I'd also be interested in training and what type of training is being done. I understand that I serve on the Lansing Community College Foundation Board. And one of my first conversations with the new president there was about the policing, the training, because of the academy that they have there. And understanding that they have 700 hours of training, when the state of Michigan only really requires 500 and some odd hours, which is actually appalling to me when you think about my sister-in-law has a beauty salon and it took her, 18 months of training to cut hair. And so now you're talking about people that are armed. And so I'm just wanting to get some understanding around one of the things that would be important for me to know is what kind of training, how long is the training, oftentimes in communities of color, when the police show up and they're not showing up to de-escalate, rather escalate. And so I want to get an understanding. I personally, in my 50 plus years on this earth, I've been stopped 4 times in my life. and 3 of the 4 have been in East Lansing. The first one I deserved when I was 19 years old. The last 2 were in the last, 2 years. And they were clearly cases of profiling. So just trying to get a better understanding of what the training looks like. And and there may be more things that will come to my mind as I start to go through these documents. One of the things I was reading here was the policy and procedure on response to resistance. And so just trying to as I dive into these documents, I know the chair was trying to get us to make some comments around the resolution, which I can make none because I haven't had a chance to dive into it. So I don't think that we can call for any comments on any of the documents at today's meeting, but I would like to have time to delve into them more, and I'm sure I'll have more. But those are the couple of things: is the data, where is it coming from, that you're collecting, and the training.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. I know City Manager Lahans would like to go, but I just want to make sure I acknowledge that after him, Commissioner Noel has been patiently waiting, and I know Commissioner Christine Root is next after that. Thank you.
So that speaks to Councilmember Bacon's issue. If there's some baseline information provided by the police department, a presentation on academy training, ongoing training, types of trainings they have, data collection, how their data collection system works, because it's all through a centralized computer system. If that's presentations you'd like in the future as good baseline data, that'd be a great place for us to start. And certainly have police work on a couple of presentations, perhaps over a couple week period, so we're not taking an hour and a half of your time, but maybe do a 30-minute presentation on data collection and systems, and then it can be a 30-minute presentation on academy training, what that looks like, just give the background of the basics. So that would certainly be something we could start work on if there's a general consensus. I don't have to say it right now, but if there's a general consensus on that, we can start work on that with the upcoming meetings.
Duly noted, and I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of us to hit the ground running once we kind of have a baseline. But please go ahead, Commissioner Noel.
Just quickly, data. We have to start with data. And I'm going to reference my time at Lansing Police often. So management analysis of traffic stops. It was a MATS analysis that we got Carter from MSU to help us with that at a time when we were going through a similar community response as far as disparate treatment or racial profiling. Do we have that now at East Lansing? If we don't, we should get going on that. Start gathering that data and then reporting it back to us. Recruitment and retention of minority and female officers. What are the numbers there? What's our makeup look like at the East Lansing Police Department? I'm sure you have that data. Let's start sharing that with this group. Same thing with discipline imposed. What's the makeup look like that with the officers and their racial background and their gender? And then lastly, I'll just say we've got to reach out to the community, do some type of survey and get a pulse on how they feel about the police department. And now we think we do know that from the negative press or from the press that we've been hearing from. But I think until we send out a survey and get information on a survey, we really don't know for sure. So those are my 4 items there.
Thank you, Commissioner Noel. Commissioner Christine, please.
I'm a data advocate too. A couple of thoughts about how that relates to our work. One, of course, is that we, as Mr. Bacon said, we need more of a common understanding ourselves. Another framework I think to have is, since our job is to design an oversight commission, I think as we look at data, we can try to think about what collection of data and ways of making data reportable so that it can be analyzed and evaluated. So it can be used for analysis and evaluation would be helpful for the Oversight Commission. So that by the time we make a proposal, a recommendation to the City Council about the design of an Oversight Commission, maybe we could include in that. And this is the kind of data that they need and will be able to actually use because it's possible to analyze it and evaluate from it. So that's just one way for us to think about what we try to do with the data that we're getting. A couple other things about this data subject. I'm aware of the external study that's been done in Lansing of the traffic stops, and that there's been a suggestion of doing something similar with that as a model in East Lansing. External analysis sounds, like the gold standard, but I think we should look at it because there are so many contested studies of this sort that are very expensive and take a lot of time, and they end up with people still debating what it means. I mean, you start with, okay, so many arrests were made on the streets. Well, who's on the streets? It's not just the residents. Well, how do you decide, how do you measure who's on the streets, who's on the sidewalks, who's in the cars? It can take huge effort. And I'm not sure, being able to exactly measure how much racial bias and how much profiling there is worth tens of thousands of dollars. If, as Ron Bacon says, if we acknowledge that people's experiences are true, maybe we don't need to spend that. Maybe we could spend that money more productively on another way. So I just don't want to make an assumption that that is the way to spend a bunch of money on data. I think there was one other thing. This isn't exactly about data. Or it might be. I think the police department is planning to start an accreditation process, which is looking a lot at policies. I don't know if it's also looking at data. And it would be helpful for me to, and I think for us, to understand, since our scope isn't really clear yet, beyond designing an oversight commission, if we could understand what's going to happen with this accreditation. Is it decided to move forward? What is it going to involve? If it involves reviewing policy and procedures, is there a role for the public in that, at least on some of these? And if so, is there a role for the study committee in that during the period we're going to be in existence, because the Oversight Commission is still ways on? Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Christine. What I saw was Commissioner Noel, Commissioner Helen, and then Commissioner Quentin, who raised their hands up while she was speaking. Please go ahead.
I just want to say that our MADS analysis back in Lansing wasn't so much to confirm the community here. It was rather as an early warning system to those officers that were showing racial bias. And so you would address those officers with additional training or discipline. So it's not to confirm community fear. I'm with you on that. I'm giving it to everyone. I believe that. I share some feelings, but it's rather, and I think that's why it's important, is to identify officers that pop up in the early warning system. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Noel. Commissioner Helen, please.
I definitely agree with what most of you guys are saying. However, especially as a student who's going through all these research statistical analysis classes currently in criminal justice, I'd say what I've taken the most in learning and understanding and being able to relate is data. So I think for our purposes, if we want to even, like we mentioned earlier, see if this can set an example for the national, state, or other citywide groups maybe to do something good here, I think if we looked at data, it would not necessarily make it more credible, but I think it'd be less of a opinionated basis, because yes, everything that people say we are assuming is true, but I think to support it with some data and some sort of looking at policies, I think it would be easier to transfer to other groups, other commissions, as to kind of like set an example as to how to move forward. With that being said, I'm also interested to see about the scope of where this is going to go, what exactly we're going to be deciding this committee is going to do. Personally, I think looking at policies now is important, as well as looking at maybe like longitudinal studies of the data of different minority compositions or different arrest rates or traffic stop rates. And I think the Lansing study that was just recently completed is going to be helpful in that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen. I believe Commissioner Quinn is up.
Yeah, so Chuck, I want to go back to Kelly's point when she mentioned about the importance of training, type of training, but also I wanted it to be noted that we need to look at the effectiveness of that training. You know, look at it from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. If we use it, how do we measure the effectiveness of it? You know, so to that point, too.
Thank you, Commissioner Quentin Tyler. Councilmate Member Bacon.
Yeah, I think I too want to know maybe what's tracking through the state. There's legislative things going on around police training and through MCOLs, and you have other people out here doing some of the same things. And I probably would absolutely reinvent the wheel, not trying to reinvent elements of policing, but there's someone out there that's probably doing it right up right or something like rules about pipelines. I'm sure there's lots of like-size, similar type cities. That'd be something I would want to know. If I was getting started, like who's doing, who's great at this already. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. That's a really long route to take to that process. And then as far as I come out of medicine, I'm always, it's great to get a ton of data, but I've also considered what the controls are, what you're controlling for, and what you're actually trying to look for, and not looking for something and then chasing it with data. That would be the issue. We're going to go in open-minded with the data. And then last but not least, training happens, this happens. From an officer's perspective, what do we do? I would put an element of this into officer well-being, and what it really, what makes the good guys go bad. Not everybody, talking to 10, 15 different people in different roles. People don't, for the most part, there's some butts that come into this job who came here to just be tough guys and bad guys. But where did, this is part of Chief Johnson's interview, when he was speaking on this, they don't come into the profession to be these types of bad people. What happens? What are the indicators? We have some experience. What do we do about it? What do we do about it when nothing can be done about it other than, something big time? So I think that's a factor what we need to get to as well. What do we do when it's not repairable and that kind of thing? So I think that's what it gets to. I think when you're sitting in that spot of deal with the worst of the worst all the time, you become the worst. So what do we do with that? That is something to consider as an end game for this as well.
Thank you, Council Member Bacon. I can tell that this is down your alley. This is the most I've heard you speak in the meeting so far since I've been working with you, and I see the energy. I just want to make a couple of quick notes before I move on to, I believe, Commissioner Christine and then Commissioner Eric. One, Vice Chair Tanya, I think there's a lot going on in the chat. So if you don't mind, can you please keep your eye on that and maybe add to the conversation for people who are communicating via the chat? It's just a little bit difficult for me to pay attention to that and everything else at the same time.
So far, we've got some resource links that have been posted, and then Commissioner Eric has posted his list of people he would like to speak with at some point through this process.
Okay.
Regarding the chat, I have a question for City Manager Lahanas. The chat function allows us to send things to either all panelists or all panelists and attendees. Should it be the latter for purposes of keeping with or keeping compliant with the open meetings laws?
Yeah, you should send all, and then it's a webinar chat, and then everyone can see it. So I would send all panelists and attendees. It does because then there's nothing, it's all to everybody. So that's the most important.
And that's one of the reasons why I asked Vice Chair Tanya to get us that information out. So just in case we were in a situation like that. But you're saying, City Manager, that if they just go ahead and do all attendee panelists, then that's going to be okay with.
Everyone should be able to see it. Zooming in should be able to select and be able to see that information. I mean, the best thing is if you just say it out loud. If there's something critical, if it's just a web link or something like that you want to share for information, that's great. But if there's something pertinent to the discussion you really want to share, I think just saying it out loud is probably the best way, and just use that for more links and such like that.
Okay, now I am getting some communication that it is not available for people watching in from the portal. So I could be mistaken on that, but I don't think that they have access to the actual chat. Are you saying that you're pretty confident that that's not the case?
So if they're on Zoom, they can look at it. If they're on the TV, then they may not be able to see any of it. So that's why if it's something that's for discussion, I would just say it out loud.
All right.
But Zoom panel, if someone is on a Zoom as a Zoom attendee, they should be able to see. If they're on their computer, logged into Zoom, they should be able to open the chat just like we can. If they're watching on TV live stream, then it would not be able to be open.
Thank you.
And if they're on Zoom, they click on the link, they can save it to like their favorites or whatever, go back.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tanya, I lost track of who was going next. Do you know by chance who had raised their hand?
The last I remember was Christine.
Commissioner Christine, and Commissioner Eric.
Maybe going back on this chat topic, Eric put up, I think, all of the things that have been put up. Maybe he could put them up again to all panelists and attendees. Maybe that would help people see them. And another thing is, does what appear in the chat that isn't, substantive resources, can that go into minutes as a way of helping people keep track of this stuff?
Awesome. I know I tried to cut and paste it into the minutes and I can't do that, but I can probably go back later and look at it and put it in.
I've been doing a screen capture because I had the same problem, Diane.
Good idea. I'll do that.
I'll put them into a document and send them to you later.
Perfect.
Oh, that's even better.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I've got some ideas about next steps in the work plan about designing an oversight commission. I don't know if this is a good time to talk about that or if we're still talking about data.
Can we just, if anybody doesn't have anything else left about data, can we just kind of sum that up and wrap it up and then we can move forward that way?
Does anyone else have any other input in regards to data?
Commissioner Christine would like to talk about the plan moving forward, but she wanted to make sure that we were done discussing our key points to data.
I have nothing more about data.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Christine Root, Commissioner Root.
There are two things I wanted to mention about how to design an oversight commission, which is one of our big tasks. I don't know if everybody's familiar with NAPOL, which is the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. It's a 20-year-old organization that is about the business of helping people set up oversight commissions. So they have lots of resources. And they are also absolutely inundated with requests for help. They're expecting that the number of oversight commissions is likely to double in the next 2 years. And a lot of them are going to be from folks like us in smaller cities and a lot of the places that have them already. So they have a short version, lists of good characteristics of oversight commissions. They also have a guidebook for creating an oversight commission that's available on their website. And I recommend that, there you go. Cedric's got it. I haven't printed it, but I've read it. I recommend that we look at it. And it's got like 12 steps. Okay. And we won't do it exactly the way they recommend, I'm sure, but it's got some very valuable ideas. And one idea, and they also, before I forget, they've been having a series of webinars, Oversight 101, and they're holding one on October 14th. That's it. And anybody can register. Also, if that's not a good time for you, they have posted one of the webinars that they did a couple weeks ago. I've watched it. I think it's valuable. It's a good way to spend an hour if you're on this committee. And first couple of points in this guidebook are clarify your goals for establishing an oversight commission and get input from the public about those goals and how to achieve them. It's, what one often starts with, and I think it's really helpful. And I think, taking a look at that guidebook and looking at the first couple of steps and seeing if we might take some of those, and perhaps starting with what's the goal of setting up an oversight commission in East Lansing and how to get input. Those are a couple of concrete ideas from people who are providing resources to folks who are doing what we're doing. The other suggestion I have is there's a lot of material from NACOL and in law review articles and elsewhere about models of civilian oversight. There are, maybe people have other counts. A lot of what I've read, there are 4 models that people talk about. And there's lots of discussion about what they are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, which ones are, what's good for 36,000 police officers in New York is not likely to be the same thing for 48 police officer department in East Lansing. And there's, discussion about those kinds of issues. So one possibility of how we would move forward on that front is perhaps have a subcommittee of folks pull together some resources on models of oversight that might be useful. So I'm suggesting that we all read a couple of things about how to create oversight commissions and try to have that help us get started, and that we have a subcommittee to take a little bit longer time to look at models and pull together those resources for us.
Thank you, Commissioner Christine. Yeah, I'm with you. It's a great pool of information and data, and they just know what they're doing. And I'm a big fan of the hybrid model, to be honest with you. Commissioner Eric Williams, and then Commissioner Noel Garcia, and then Councilmember Bacon, please.
Just to speak to a couple of things that I put up in the chat, and hopefully I can send it out to all participants in a moment. I understand that as part of the general discussion that comes out of the Black Lives Matter movement, that there is something called defunding the police, which of course has become controversial. But there seems to be something much less controversial that's attached to that notion, which has to do with switching some calls from police officers to people with expertise in mental health or social work, dealing with things like homeless people or people in mental health crises. And I was surprised to learn that there were a number of, it could be in the tens or of cities around the country who have these programs. There's a relatively well-known one in Eugene, Oregon. I see there's one in Indianapolis, and there's studies of these programs where from the 911 dispatcher, there's a decision made who to send to respond to this call. Sometimes they may send police, sometimes they may send a social work team or something. and so there's a couple of, I've run across a couple of evaluations of those programs. And there's one put up by the Council of State Governments that's evaluating evaluations. And that's one thing that we might want to consider as part of the study plan is what is appropriate for police to respond to and what is appropriate for people with other expertise to respond to.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric Williams. I believe Councilmember Bacon is up next.
Yeah, just to build off of what Commissioner Root was speaking on, that really sounded really good. You can kind of begin with an end in mind of where you want to go with this, rather than finding which model you think is going to be efficient and maybe working towards that. Might be a good recommendation. And then, I think that was pretty primarily it. I just don't want you guys to get into too many streams of activity that aren't going anywhere. And I think as well, that we don't make any assumptions about where the data is going to take us. As I consider, I'm always leery of just data dumping and things like that, and having presumptions, and sometimes our own prejudices can get in the way of where we think the data is going to go, and it doesn't go there. So I just probably trying to find out what our end is in mind and start working towards that. And if it doesn't go there, then I like the idea of finding out which one of these models would fit our community. So that's it. I'm going to be quiet the rest of the way.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. It's good to hear you talking about this stuff. You really add to the table. I just would like to take a quick moment to talk just for a second. When I looked at the agenda and I thought about the work plan and about how to go forward with my thoughts, I'm a little bit abstract than some of you structured people who think differently than I do, which I totally appreciate. But I saw it, I was looking at it as like a step plan. We have the first one is listening, we have responding, evaluating, planning, and then implementing. So that was kind of how I was kind of looking at it. And a lot of it's been covered with some of the discussion, but I just wanted to highlight it because I think this will be the most that I say in regards to the work plan and what I was thinking. But when I talk about listening, I talk about, as someone's already talked about, getting the information from other committees, other municipalities, feedback from residents. Obviously, POEMs has been involved at some point, city council and staff as we have today. So I think about really the listening aspect as part of the work plan, as the process, and then responding. And so with that, the result is to get established transparency and having great communication. And then responding, the second one is really prioritizing projects that focus on improving community relationships and trust, ability and transparency by recommending reviewing policies and procedures for the community-driven independent oversight commission, resulting in more legitimacy, as well as independent voice outside the city officials and staff who were involved. So having that independency go along with that. And then obviously the evaluation, and there's been a lot of talk about that with, how we align our priorities with our available resources and the budget that's provided. I think City Manager Lahanas has addressed that. We're going to be financially secure with some significant amount of resources available for us to have that. So I really think it's important to really keep that in mind. And then I have planning, and you guys have already been talking about all these different things. So I'm not saying really anything new, but I'm just giving you my feedback. But once we have identified the focus areas, we prioritize areas that emphasize data collection, which we've talked about a lot. But I think really the analysis part is really where we want to go, in my humble opinion, with when you get all this data, how do we analyze it? And I think Councilmember Bacon had hit the nail on the head when it comes to kind of really having that control base in regards to that. So with the result, given the community, driven oversight when it comes to that community oversight, when you have that kind of information available and how you look at it. And then lastly, implementation, and just really having conducted in part and whole by people who are most impacted by policing. So really making sure that once we do have this thing developed, that those people are the ones who are representing the independent oversight commission. So just really being independent of the political process. And so as things change with that, it remains the same as far as the functionality of the oversight. So I just wanted to add that and take it for what you will when it comes to what you've already discussed. But that's just kind of my thoughts. Are there any other points of discussions on the work plan? Commissioner Noel?
I just want to support what Christine was saying about this stuff. The work, I think we've got great ideas out there. Now if we can kind of compartmentalize and agree to what kind of work maybe or some things might be put on the subcommittee.
Commissioner Noel, I hate to interrupt you, but I can barely hear you, and so I think maybe others might have trouble hearing you. So could you speak up just a little bit? Yes, I hear it too. If you're not speaking, could you please mute? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't need to repeat everything I said. I just was saying, Chris, I support what Chris was saying about rolling up our sleeves and get subcommittee work going. We've got some great ideas out here. We've got to get started somehow. And I'm not trying to rush the process by all means. But with that in mind, how we can have some support. The Hannes is still here, I believe, but the offer support, we really need that support if we, in fact, do decide on breaking up with some committees. The commissions I've been on, state commissions I've been on, it seems to be an effective way to get some work done.
Thank you, Commissioner Noel, and I second that wholeheartedly. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, I'm all in favor of having ad hoc committees where we can really kind of dissect the work. Chuck, your abstract view is very structured, actually. Which made me laugh inside when you were saying that. I was like, that's pretty structured.
Okay.
But it's all good, and there's nothing wrong with structure. One of the things, because I don't know many of you, Noel and I served on the Mayor Drug-Free Youth Committee some years ago, outside of a few of the staff and Councilmember Bacon. I don't know many of you, and I certainly don't know the chief. And so I, would love to hear what Chief Johnson's vision is, we're talking about this, is really going to impact his day-to-day work. So I would love to hear what your vision is. I know that you came back on October 5th, which is a memorable date for me because it's my mother's birthday. So I'll always remember that date. So I'd love to hear from you.
You want to hear from me now? Or a presentation? Or?
No, we would love to hear from you now. I think it's a great question.
All right, it is a great question. So thanks for having me, commissioners. My main vision, of course, is to make sure our community and our police department become one. Our partnerships, we've started with our command meeting last week. I have asked them to buy into what my programs are going to be. They've all raised their hand and they want to be a part of our positions going forward. One thing that I'm old school police. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, but then I came to East Lansing to be a cop. I was there for 30 years. But I was raised at East Lansing. I was never been a cop before. And so I was raised dealing with the community. I was raised with walking in Footbeat, talking to business people, dealing with the community. We would actually be assigned to work Footbeat back in the 80s and had to work 8 hours in July in all of our gear. But that's what the boss wanted at the time. And that's how I was raised. And over the years, that has gone by the wayside. And so I told our command staff that we're going back to community-based policing initiatives. And trust me, I worked at East Lansing, and they had this community-based policing. I was part of it, but over the years, it started to die off. And so it's coming back, and all of our command has bought into it. But I told them also that if we don't have the community support, there is no way we can go forward. And so our community support is become my priority in everything that we do. And so it deals with walking Footbeat, deal with the community, deal with the business owners. Any type of contact we have in the community becomes our priority. And so that is my main priority. And we got 50 cops, we got probably 40 civilians, or I'm not sure what the numbers are. But there is no way we can do it without the community support. The only way we get the support is for them to understand what we do, being transparent in everything that we do, and making sure that they know what we're doing, and we're doing everything above board, ethical, and things like that. When our command meeting, I showed a videotape to my command from New Holmes, and it's what I believe in. It's called do right. And so I told our command people, we're gonna do right. We're gonna do the best that we can. We can treat others the way we want to be treated. And those three foundations drive me every day. It's going to drive our command staff. It's going to drive our employees. And if they can't understand those three concepts, I told them that they cannot work at East Lansing Police Department. And my command staff raised their hand right when they wanted to. I said, we're going to buy into this. There's no buy into it. You either want to do it or you don't want to do it. And they were all extremely excited about doing what's right, do the best that we can, and treat others who want to be treated. And that's going to be our foundation going forward. And I think we got to do that every single day. And I've been at it for a week now, and I've seen great response from our employees. They've been doing great things already, and they've been giving me a lot of good feedback. And I trust our leadership in our department. And they all know that I'm as I said, old school, and we will hold everyone accountable for their behaviors. And that's, I was held accountable for my behaviors. I was raised by my mom in inner city Detroit. And when I got in trouble, I got in trouble. And, I didn't get any passes from my mother. And so if I did good things, my mom praised me for it. But if I did bad things, I was disciplined. And so that's how I was raised. And I think people who know me from East Lansing, I tend to be extremely fair, but I also tend to be fairly firm in the things that we're going to be doing. And we are going towards accreditation of the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. Our deputy chief is spearheading that. And we're excited about that because we never had that accreditation in the past. We're excited about it. The deputy chief and captain are extremely confident that we'll be able to meet all the requirements for us to get that accreditation. It's going to take a couple of years for us to do that. But that was one of the first things we talked about last week, that we're going on that path. And they were extremely excited about that. And the method we're going in. And I'm excited about it too. So I've been telling the people who I've been talking to that we do ask for some patience. And I'm excited to work with the commission, with the temporary oversight committee and the full-time oversight committee that we're going to be working with to make sure that our department stays transparent, treating people the way they want to be treated, the way they want to be treated, and do the best we can for the community. So, that's in a nutshell. I didn't have anything prepared, but that's maybe hopefully gives you a little snapshot of what I'm planning for our organization. Our command staff is already on board with that, and I'm excited about that piece of the puzzle to begin with. It's 5 days of work.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Appreciate that input. I didn't see any hands be raised during his discussion. Did anyone have any comments or follow-up questions? Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Johnson. That was awesome. That's why I really enjoyed interviewing and talking with you. I did appreciate your vision. That's a big reason for my support. I think one thing, Chuck, though, and just for everyone in the group, as far as the subgroups go, as far as whatever we're doing goes, I have just as important as this is, as long as it's taken to get here, we can't do anything that's open-ended. Whatever is going to take place here, if it goes into subcommittee, it's coming out on the date when it's been prescribed to come out of subcommittee. There's absolutely no time for elongated or protracted negotiations. The community's been waiting a long time. Everyone who's been waiting to get on this commission's been waiting a long time. So whatever, as soon as we move towards setting this, establishing the meeting schedule, yes, I'm talking more because I'm really serious about this. I think it requires a certain amount of seriousness. This is a deliverable that a lot of people are waiting on, and I think if anyone thought it was anything else, they're mistaken. And there is a seriousness. So when we're fine with whatever subcommittees want to be formed, but they need to put a time, they need to be time bound, and that goes for anything we're doing organizationally. If we want to see something, staff needs to work hard to deliver, and that times you guys need to deliver on whatever that deliverable is in X amount of time, and everything needs a time to be time bound. It can't be open ended. So, because we have a deadline, obviously, that's not common amongst boards and commissions. You know, it's usually this kind of open-ended meandering thing. We're not in that position. So just as long as that's in the back of everybody's mind, I think that's critical right now. That everything we do is time bound, and we get to the next movement, or if we have to abandon something, we give ourselves time to go to do something else structurally. If we find out we've reached a dead end on that, so we can't use all our time just meandering around. So even as of tonight, I think we need to get the meeting schedule established so we can know what time and where we're going out in the next 6 months. I think that may define what we're doing and what we can, then we can start filling in those slots. That'll be critical. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. And I just, respectfully say that that is so important when it comes to us waiting for information from staff. It's just something that, with the time frames and constraints, there's going to be a lot of pressure on not only us, but you as well. And I feel confident that you'll step up to the plate and give us what we need when we need it, so we can do something with it. Commissioner Helen, please go ahead.
Yeah, just going off of that, I really appreciate what you say with the deadlines. It's super easy to, kind of talk in circles in a lot of these things. So I was just wondering if perhaps by the end of this meeting, we can maybe come up with, if we are going to do these subcommittees, with 3, maybe just so we have an idea, and then for the next meeting, we can come back and either say, I thought more about this, and I don't think we need this one, or I thought more about this, we do need this one, and maybe nominating heads of subcommittees just so we can kind of get the ball rolling here.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen. So if I understand you correctly, you would like to have us have a goal today to establish a few subcommittees, whether they stick or don't stick, going forward by the time we have our next meeting. Is that what I understand?
Or not, yes, in a way, but just instead of saying we need subcommittees, maybe talk a little bit more specifically, because then it's easier to establish parameters and make it more of a realistic goal. I don't know if we all agree. Maybe we can take a vote if we want to do subcommittees and just move forward from there. I don't know if everyone has an opinion on that right now, or if they want to wait on it.
I think City Manager Lahannis would like to speak.
So just due to constraints of staffing, there may be somewhat limited how many meetings we can support. You're looking at the team right here. So if there are subcommittees, that's going to take the place of the committee meeting in some way. So if you were going to meet twice a month and you want subcommittees to meet, that means that this commission is going to meet less probably, so we can push a subcommittee meeting in the interim. I'm not sure if there's information and background that you all want to hear. It seems like we should try to do this as one group. Get the information and the work plan that you want, the data you want, the presentations you want, the research, lay it out, and then start having those meetings and chipping away at it. Have the listening session. I actually was intrigued by the idea of running a survey. I know all Garcia mentioned the survey, and I thought, we're going to get to hear from 10 or 20 or 30 people if we put out opportunities to listen. A survey, you can talk to 300 or 400 people. So I think there's some great ideas here. But I would just encourage you to consider if we do subcommittees, and it's going to be into the time of this group, because we're being constrained by the nights of the week. Nights of the week have commission meetings that already meet. City Council Tuesday, Human Relations Wednesday. There's lots of commission nights and meetings that happen. So we're constrained by the calendar, and we're constrained by staff time, both of those things. So I would encourage you to think about perhaps trying not to use subcommittees, but rather get this group tuned up and start getting the information to you guys, so you guys can all benefit from that information. That's a thought for you.
Thank you for your input. Commissioner Cedric.
So I think one possibility is that rather than subcommittees, we sort of chunk out tasks. And by that I mean we can, as individuals, sort of come up with 2 or 3 things that we each want the support staff to do for us, whether that's gathering materials from other jurisdictions doing the same thing, or somebody sort of summarizing the NACO, or there's a similar document from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, right? And so then we can effectively make the staff our subcommittees, is what I'm recommending, right? And so then we all come back as a commission in 2 weeks and get all of that information in maybe a series of shorter presentations to us from those various stakeholders that we're trying to engage.
We can certainly do that. We can collect the information and lay out a proposed sort of plan by what you said now, what you want to see, and then you can add to it and tweak it and change it. But we've already received a ton of feedback on what you want to see, so I think we've gotten a much better idea of when we started.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Chris afterward.
I think if we can define the time, like our meeting time. So we're meeting at 6 o'clock, is it 6 to 7:30, or so there's an end time as well to our meetings. And I think that would be helpful. Also on surveys, I heard someone talk about, on how you analyze it. So how you would analyze it is you would have an independent company do the survey and they analyze the data. So that removes any of our biases that we may have when looking at data. And so there's a research company right here in East Lansing, Capital Research Services, owned by Rochelle Neal, who's been doing this research work for 30 plus years. And so that may be something that, you want to consider when you're talking about surveying.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Commissioner Christine.
Two things about this idea of research and subcommittees and staff. One of them is that I think it would be helpful if we all understood what the parameters are for a subcommittee functioning. Is it required that let's say we have a 3-person subcommittee? Is it required that that group meet in public and have staff person at that meeting? Or is it possible for 3 people to do work in another fashion? I need that information to understand how to do this. The other thought I have is I've been waiting for this group to get started. I think we all have. I'm not waiting to tell the staff what needs to be done. We're supposed to be doing a lot of work, and part of that work is research. So the idea that we'll tell you will get us everything about different models of oversight. It never dawned on me that the staff that are already busy with a lot of other things are going to pull together, an annotated bibliography of materials about oversight models. I think we can do some of this work, and I think a lot of us are ready to do it. And if we can find the way that's legal and practical time of COVID to do it, I would like to find ways for us to actually do work, those of us who are on this committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Chris. And if you don't mind, can you please respond to that, City Manager Lahanas, in regards to what we can do with our quorum and Open Meetings Act? And then after you, we have Commissioner Noel.
The issue of subcommittees is a little bit tricky. It depends on whether they're effectively recommending policy and it gets to the level of recommendation. So a safe harbor approach really is that they're public. I think that's the best answer, is that they're public and it's the most transparent answer. There are ways around that. If there are things that you're doing that aren't effectively recommending something, if you gather information, I guess, I can get our attorney's opinion on that. But I think generally speaking, as this group is formulating an important policy, that information will go towards you guys formulating a policy. It strikes me that those should be public. That's my quick. I can get a complete answer for you. We're actually also scheduling an OMA meeting for all of our boards and commissioners coming up hopefully in the near future. But that will be weeks from now, not tomorrow.
One time on the Hispanic Latino Commission, the 6 years I shared, the last 3 years, we had subcommittee work. it didn't violate OMA, but George, please get legal opinion on this. Because we didn't make decisions, we didn't have a quorum, number one. We didn't make decisions, we reported back the work to the commissioners and our monthly meetings or quarterly meetings. So that's why I had suggested that. But and then I also mentioned we should look into how these subcommittees would be affected by OMA.
Thank you, Commissioner Noel. Commissioner Cedric, please.
I think maybe one beneficial starting point is if each of the commission members just come up with a list of questions that we have, whether those are questions about the process, questions about how civilian review boards work in and of themselves. And as Commissioner Root noted, some of that can be as we're formulating these questions, we're doing our own research, but there are inevitably going to be questions that we're not able to answer. We can't find the answer. There are, they might be human resource specific or whatever it is. So, and then we'll probably, in many instances, all have very similar questions, right? We probably have understanding about the process and what it is that we're trying to achieve here. But there probably is, again, from a baseline standpoint, some questions that everybody would have, and then we might even task those things out to commission members, right? So those lists of questions may be shared via email. And again, this is something that maybe Mr. Lahanas might want to chime in on, but those may be shared via email, and then individual commission members could say, hey, this is sort of up my alley. I'll research these 2 or 3 things, and then we'll report back on those in the next commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Cedric. I believe Vice Chair Tanya and then Commissioner Helen is up.
Just to piggyback off that, that was one of the questions I was going to ask is what are we allowed to do when it comes to communication via email? If we can have like that group email where we could do those questions, people could kind of pick from that. And then the other thing I wanted to circle back to was getting back to the data standpoint. I know that we started this meeting understanding that we really need data to know where we need to go from here. So I wanted to know, is it possible to come up with some data points we specifically want to have for the next meeting, if at all possible? I know that there was, somebody had mentioned traffic stops was one that had been mentioned. And in that thought process, I had a couple of others that I think would probably be beneficial for us in this commission, but I just wanted to know if that's something we could possibly agree upon tonight, is to get some of those particular data points.
I think it'd be very easy to have a presentation on what the data looks like that we collect, how the system works in collecting it, and then show you the current data that we've been collecting. So a little bit of the background about it, how we collect it, and then moving forward what the data looks like. We can do all of that for the next presentation.
Does that cover your question, Vice Chair Tanya, for now?
For now, yeah.
All right, Commissioner Helen, please go.
My thought just slipped from what I was going to say. I know it was in response to whoever spoke before, Vice Chair Williams. So I don't know. Yes, okay. So if we are allowed to, also something I use as a resource now for like collaborating on research projects is Microsoft Teams or like Google Drive, where you can all edit a document. And so if we wanted to make a shared document where we start bulleting questions, perhaps after this meeting is concluded, people who can reference it, if their question's already listed as a bullet, they don't have to re-add it again. And we can also add new ones throughout, the whole 2-week period or a week period before we meet again, so people can get a general idea of what is already, going to be discussed, because sometimes things get lost in emails and like the reply alls and things can get kind of like muddled. So I think one of the team drives or Google Drives might benefit in this aspect as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen. I think there's going to be some challenges with that as far as grouping. I know for my particular other commission, we have to not do reply all, because then the public doesn't have access to that, even though we're not making decisions or really having too much of a discussion. It's just it's just kind of messy right now. And then the share drive, I believe, is under the same circumstance. The public just doesn't have access, and so I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but and I don't know who would take the responsibility on. But what we've been doing, if we've had individual questions or we had individual information that we wanted to go out to the group, we've sent that information into the liaison, and they've distributed it out to us all in a way then that it can be public record, and there's a chance for the public to kind of see what we're talking about. But I'm not quite sure if that's appropriate for what we have. Please, City Manager Alanis.
So you're exactly right that we want to stay away from collaborating through email or documents, because really that's the deliberation that should be happening here so the public can see it. So we've had that come up where commissioners sort of do this impromptu, like sharing of information. Someone asks a question, then you figure something you add to it. But that's the collaborating decision making that should be happening in person. So best if you have questions, if you have things you want to see, resources or ideas, share them one direction with staff, Diane. We will compile them, and then we can have a list of compiled questions who asked for it, and then we can bring that back and show people this is all the universal things you guys have asked about this past 2 weeks. And then people at that point can look at it in the public meeting and say, add this, that kind of thing. Great. So I would say share one direction, share to staff, and then we can compile stuff for you.
Thank you, City Manager. I believe Commissioner Eric and then Dr. Tyler, Commissioner Tyler next.
One of the things I was looking forward to using this commission for, this study group for, was to talk to experts outside and question them. It seems to me that as wonderful as the East Lansing staff is, and people in the police department is, that there are people out there that have information, and that the service that we can provide to the city council is talking to those people and reporting what they say, rather than using Google that anybody can do, or talking to the people inside the city. So I would hope that we would make an effort to bring people into these Zoom meetings and pick their brains.
I could also have a list of potential people to come speak to the group along your lines. I had already thought that we could have the city's labor council from outside labor. We could have a labor union attorney there. We could have all of these experts come over weeks. But again, we sort of have to parcel this out over, maybe it's one presentation per bi-weekly meeting. Then you have time for discussion, time for input, and then we can go on to the next meeting. Otherwise, you'll be inundated, right? So that's your first several months can be just having experts and having, people presenting, giving presentations and feedback. So that's part of what we would propose. Yes.
Thank you, City Manager. It seems that Commissioner Tyler is up, and then Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, so Chuck, I just want to say I appreciate all the comments, but as a person that's following everything, I want to ask you as a chairperson, where are we at on the agenda? And then also, how much time do we have allocated for this meeting? Because the calendar invite for 6 to 8, so I want to make sure that we're on schedule. Have these meetings outlined, going forward, because my calendar is very busy as well. But this is a very important topic to me as well. So,
thank you. I'll go ahead and answer then, Councilmember Bacon. We are at item 2.1. We have 2.2 where we'll be discussing our meeting schedule, commissioner comments, and we still have communication from the audience. So we were allotted, from what I understand, 2 hours for this meeting. And that was set up. And so I was just going to, and that was going into what Commissioner Kelly was talking about with her inquiry about our time. And I just thought that was already going to be challenging anyway with public comment, because we never know who's going to be on the line, how long that's going to take. Some of us, like to talk and have great things to say. So I'm not a big fan of having time limits, but I'm definitely respectful of people's time limits and things they got going outside of what we're doing. So that's kind of where we're at with the meeting right now, Commissioner Quentin Tyler. So does that kind of give you a feel for where we're at and what we got going on tonight?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're in alignment of that and be respectful of everybody's time.
Understood, and I definitely appreciate that. Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I'm going to build off of that, and just that we're actually, if no one's noticed, the plane's already flying and we're still building it. We need to be deciding what's going to happen on October 26th, which I'm presuming is the next meeting. And I think you need to start building that out. What do you want in the next meeting? And then that at least buys you time to figure out kind of the circular thing that's going on right now. That could be built out, but you need to begin to set up what you want to see on the 26th. It's coming from staff.
It sounds.
They got to get started now.
Yeah, it sounds like based on what little bit we heard. Oh, okay.
And you need to outline this. We need to know what order, like George has mentioned in labor and those kinds of things. We don't need to hear from labor until we're deciding what we're even going to ask for. I don't know. I think that's a much later part of this. We need to outline what we want to achieve and when to bring in which experts. I think the first expert, you hit it on, you had this already. We're kind of going around the mountain. We need to see which model that you're after. Maybe we need some expertise in that and then what we want from that. Then we get into the other thing. I think that's where the data or decide on it's time to put some order to this. A, B, C, D, and these are the next meeting. We don't have time to, I'm sorry to be crass or whatever right now. It's time, we got to get moving. This is not, we've all been delayed, and I think we've had a lot, and frankly, we've had a lot of time to think about this and everyone that's involved in this. So if you got things you want on the agenda, move forward. We just need to decide what happens first, what happens second, what happens third, and because we don't have any weeks to waste based on this timeline. So we need to decide what's going to happen on the 26th and move to item 2.2 and see what the establishment meeting schedule is going to be going forward. So, and then we can do whatever from there. That buys you time. So,
Thank you, City Manager Lahanis. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, City Manager Lahanis, and then Commissioner Chris Root, and then Commissioner Kelly, I believe, is what I saw, and then Vice Chair Tanya. You're muted.
Sorry, happy to go over one presentation between 2 weeks if that's what we need. We'll talk about data, what we collect, what our current data looks like, and then we can also potentially lay out some of what we heard for a work plan for coming weeks and months. And then you guys can look at that and try to assimilate this, like Ron is mentioning, try to assimilate this into a package for you to start thinking about a work plan that you can look at, pick apart and add to, but at least we'll have something for you to look at and start responding to and start moving along.
Thank you. Commissioner Christine.
I agree with George about having a data presentation at the next meeting, and I think he was also suggesting have a sort of order of speakers to look at then. In terms of the work plan, what I would suggest is that all of us take a look at the NACOL resources on that and come in to design, the first 3 months of the work plan on actually designing the Oversight Commission. I'd like for us to be able to get our teeth into it by looking at the materials ourselves. It's not that onerous. Pull her up with that.
Thank you.
And then another thing that hasn't come up yet that I think we need at our next meeting, the Police Officers Association of Michigan on May 26th demanded to bargain the impact of this committee. And I think our committee needs to know what the status of that is. And we need to know pretty soon so that we understand if it has an impact on how we operate. So I hope that can be on the agenda next time too.
Thank you, Commissioner Christine. Vice Chair Tanya Williams.
No, I'm all set.
You're all set? Okay, so just to wrap things up, we had a strong suggestion of getting the data presentation by city staff. We're going to have the NACOL information that's been suggested and put in the links in our chat, and then hopefully get the status of the POAM issue that they had with us doing what we do. Does that sound fair as far as what we have as far as a starting point for the next agenda for our next meeting for all the commissioners? Good. Let's move on. If there's not any more discussion on that, we can move on and get this thing going again. All right, so item 2.2, let's establish a meeting schedule. I believe that we already have a proposed 10/26 date by Council Member Bacon, just as a suggestion. Is there any input in how we can do that? Because I know, Mr. City Manager, you have a lot of different things going on with your coverage.
I was going to propose that I believe it would be reasonable to do up to 2 meetings per month. And I think that that's also a reasonable time frame for us. You don't have to be twice a month every time. I'm just saying that that gives us enough time to get work done in between meetings, to get to line up what have you. But also, I believe 2 meetings a month could be supported by the staff. More than that, I think we'd have to discuss if it's as needed or something like that. But that's just a sort of a good guideline for you.
I support that. I think that's a good start.
Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledgement. And per Commissioner Root's 3-month timeline, maybe it's a build out. We build out with twice a week for 3 months or something like that, and a 6-month build out. And once we have some leverage or have something going on, we find that catch point, we could go to once a month or something like that. That's obviously negotiable. I kind of considered that in the back of my mind, but that's the type of time commitment I think it's going to take, at least temporarily. It's something to get to baseline as quickly as we need to. So.
Thank you. So from what I understand right now, the next meeting is set for the 26th, or was that just the date that was thrown out there? Is that kind of how you, when you talk about twice a month, City Manager Lohanas, is that kind of really the first round for our next one?
I had come up with twice a month, but not a specific date beyond 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Look at that and see if beyond that, what we go 2 weeks beyond that date as well. Let me open the calendar and see.
Yeah, the 26th is on Monday, 2 weeks from now.
George, do we have to motion and vote on this or no?
The calendar?
Yeah.
If we come up with that, if you say you want to do twice a month, and then we can say it's the first and third Thursday, Mondays, or something like that. Then
It's second and fourth, George.
Yeah, can't be the third Monday.
So we say that and then have people say that we have a motion on that. Shall you want to tell me if there's any date conflicts for the second and fourth Mondays with other commissions?
Sure, I can check with,
Sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
I checked with Emily in the city council office, and she said preliminarily, it looks like the second and fourth Mondays of the month are not in conflict with other commission meetings.
Which is good.
Which is good.
They are in conflict with East Lansing School Board. And East Lansing School Board meetings are of great interest to a lot of parents in the community. I don't know what to suggest about that, because I know we can't conflict with city meetings, but that is a city residence policy meeting that is attracting a lot of people.
All right, yeah, it's going to be tough. So is there a motion right now on the floor, or does someone want to have a motion for the second, or for the second and the fourth going forward? I see there. So moved by.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
The meeting's on the second and fourth Monday.
Is there a second?
I support that.
Supported by Commissioner Noel. Is there any more discussion in regards to that for that right now?
Yes.
Time frame acceptable to people, 6 o'clock starting time?
6 to 8.
Yeah. So the motion on the floor is for the second and fourth, starting from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., seconded by Noel, Commissioner Noel Garcia. Is there any more discussion on that? Clarification?
Yeah, what question?
Commissioner, Vice Chair Tanya, and then Commissioner Eric.
Yes, I was looking at the calendar for December. How are we planning this through the holiday season? So if we're looking at the second and fourth Mondays, the fourth Monday is the 28th. I don't know if you guys still take that off for Christmas, or if that's a work day.
I think you have to expect that those 2 week period pretty much no one meets anywhere in the city. So.
Commissioner Williams.
Are you sure you want a hard adjournment time for these meetings?
I personally don't think that it's possible. I like to respect it as much as we can, and I'll work a lot better in going forward to push the agenda a little bit stronger to appreciate and respect everyone else's time. There are some variables in there that I won't have control over. Is there any other comments from?
If I may.
Yes, Commissioner Kelly.
There needs to be a stop time. These things can end up going on and on and on. And so, you know, I mean, I understand that we're not going to get everything resolved in one particular meeting, but we do need to have some type of end point versus going on to 10 o'clock at night or what have you. There does, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, right now we're kind of filling it out today, so there's a lot of, you know, going around the mulberry bush, as my grandmother would say. But I just really think that we need to have, I mean, outside of public comment that can, you know, maybe take us outside of time, but the things that we can control, we need to work hard at controlling that and be respectful of other people's time. This commission, this body is very important to me, this work, but I'm not going to be on here all night. You'll start losing people, we'll start getting distracted. And so I think that needs to be taken into consideration. The things that we can control, we need to control.
Duly noted. And like I said, Commissioner Kelly, I will do a better job. I really didn't realize I was going to be doing what I'm doing tonight. But I'll do a better job going forward with managing that and making sure that I'm very, and Justin and I will work together a little bit stronger with that as well. And then, like you said, I think really our only unknown variable will be the public comment. So we'll just kind of do that in a way that I will make sure that we will respect that time from 6 to 8 and get that stuff productive, if that's okay with you, going forward and see how it goes.
This was no criticism on your part tonight, your work that you're doing tonight. It was really just in response of, do we want to have a hard stop time? And I'm in favor of a hard stop time.
Okay. So are you adding an amendment to our 2nd to the 4th and having that hard stop time from 6 to 8? Is that what you're proposing to the motion?
No, that was the motion, 6 to 8. Someone made a motion of a time of 6 to 8 already.
Oh, I didn't hear that. So is there any more discussion on that?
Just to note, I don't think we can have a firm stop if there was something that has to be done, but certain advisory and staff and all trying to control it. But the public comment is variable. If we set our process, all of the public can speak, and we can't restrict the number of public. You can restrict the time of each public to speak to 2 or 3 minutes or something like that. But the public could take you out of that, and you can't not give the public a chance to speak.
And I did give that caveat.
Yep.
Because it's public comment, but I'm just saying for us to go on and on and on, and then try to have public come in at 8 o'clock, we need to be, you know, respectful of the public comment too.
Well, George, to Eric's point, shouldn't that mean that the public comment should start off the meeting?
Yeah, the reason I didn't start it tonight was because we didn't get a chance to even introduce ourselves. To start off the public comment is tough. But also you have to be aware, if you don't limit it enough, you could have public comment extend for quite some time, and then you don't get to take care of your business as well. So that's another consideration on that. But if you limit it enough to 2 or 3 minutes per person, that shouldn't be a problem. But if you have it more open-ended, you could have the whole meeting taken up by public comment if there's something that you want to weigh in on, and you don't get to transact your business. So that's the concern.
Any more discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor for having our meetings going forward for the 2nd and the 4th from 6 to 8, softly, but kind of hardly as well, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Point of clarification, 2nd and 4th Mondays. I don't think you mentioned the Mondays, right?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Told you to keep me on point. All right. Moving on to item number 3, commissioner announcements. I know we've said a lot already tonight. Is there any announcements that any of you would like to make briefly to the commission? Commissioner Helen.
I'm just going to be brief. I'm waiting to hear back from the coordinator for the other committee, but I'm also on the University Student Commission, so I'm going to be relaying some information back and forth, just so everyone knows if they want to reach student body, like I'd be a good person to talk to.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen. Anyone else? All right, so moved on. So we are now finally to communication from the audience. I think, Justin, you have that covered for us. Do we have anyone on the line? Before we open that up, let me entertain possibly a motion for a time limit, because we had that conversation earlier today. I know it's our first meeting. I hate to kind of do it that way, but is there anyone who may want to talk about that real briefly, about maybe having some type of limit on discussion? I know, just for a point of reference, for our particular commission, we have a 5-minute time limit ongoing in regards to, just for the sake of time. And ours is pretty much the longest one. And usually other commissions do 3 minutes and 2 minutes, things like that. So I just wanted to, before we open it up real quick, I just want to see if anyone had a comment or suggestion in regards to that.
Is 5 minutes going to be too long? But Lahannes is the expert on this.
It just depends how many people show up to speak. So it's up to the commission. You can try 5 minutes, and if it becomes burdensome where you can't get everyone in, then maybe you have to reduce it at a later date to 3 minutes. So maybe you can start with 5, but if it becomes problematic, maybe you try to scale it back at the next meetings to 3.
Okay.
That sounds
Because it occurs to me that this exercise is being driven by public demand, and so the public is kind of playing a role that they might not play so strongly in the zoning board.
Thank you, Commissioner Root.
I have a language of emotion that's been used in some other bodies, if you'd like.
Love to hear it.
In order to maintain the order of an online public meeting, I move to adopt a rule pursuant to MCL 15.263 subsection 1, limiting public comment to 5 minutes per individual for today's electronic meeting held by the study committee.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
What the DDA uses.
Yes. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded motion proposed by Ms. Christine Root, seconded by Cedric. Any more discussion on that? Councilmember Bacon and then Commissioner Helen.
Just point of privilege, I think that 5 minute may weaken your former motion to keep it to 2 hours. You can do that. I mean, we can all count math here. That could blow through a quarter or half of your meeting for public comment on a particular night. You might want to put strong consideration in how you're going to manage that time on any given night, not under the assumption that very few people in 5 minutes, 10 people, that's 50 minutes. So I think they're in conflict. So maybe want to give some consideration before you move forward. Just point of privilege.
Thank you. Commissioner Helen.
I was going to say the exact same thing, whether we limit the 5 minutes, which makes it even more difficult for the public to express your opinion. But I mean, even if you have 5 people come in and say 5 minutes worth of things, that's almost half an hour between the transitions and the responses that we lose.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen. Is there any more discussion on the proposed motion?
I would just also mention, if you have a special listening meeting where you invite the public to speak, you could have a longer period for that type of a meeting where you're just inviting public comment, perhaps, if there's a listening type meeting. And then for regular meetings, limit it to something less like 3 minutes. So it doesn't mean you can't have a listening type meeting at some point in the future.
I really like that. Is there any other discussion on the proposed motion for tonight?
That's exactly what I envisioned when we talked about inviting the community to have input in on this, is that there would be actually a meeting designed, just the whole meeting is for them. That's what I envisioned. I didn't envision it to be like every single meeting. I envisioned that we would have a meeting that we invite the public, and that's their meeting, those 2 hours. But, no, I get that, but I'm just saying, I envision that 5 minutes per person is not real meaningful dialogue and weighing in on this body of work as a whole, that we could have. That's what I envision. when I've been part of community conversations, when they're looking for input for different nonprofits, for instance, they actually had meetings where they brought in the community, and the whole meeting was the community's meeting. So that's just what I envisioned. I didn't realize that it would only be relegated to public comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Councilmember Bacon.
So many people are on the line.
For today's meeting, there is one caller.
I think the 5-minute limit for today's meeting will work fine. And the motion is just for today's meeting.
Councilmember Bacon, did you have any more discussion?
Yeah, and that special meeting, I'm just trying to project out here so we don't lose time here. You're looking at December, you're already looking at disruption in December. Perhaps there could be a special meeting in December, the same week as your actual meeting, which would be the week of the 14th. Maybe you did it later in that week, and that would allow, could make that special meeting all around open to the public or public comment. It could be an open meeting because you're not going to get anything in the week of the holiday or probably the week of New Year's. So if you're considering where to put it, that might be just for your consideration. Good spot. Looking through the calendar and projecting out a little bit.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon, for forecasting us a little bit for that. Any more discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the second, fourth, 6 to 8, or no, I'm sorry, excuse me, we're on the 5 minutes. I'm sorry. All those in favor for restricting public comment to 5 minutes for tonight's meeting only. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed? So motion passed. Justin, can you please get us going?
Yes, the caller in the queue is phone number ending in 963. 963. You may need to dial *6 to be here.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, this is Alice Dreger, 621 Sunset Lane. I have 4 points to make that should be pretty brief. First of all, I continue to be incredibly frustrated by lack of understanding of the Open Meetings Act. There's a very great handbook that's put out by the state of Michigan called the Open Meetings Act Handbook. And if you Google it, you will find it, and it is written in plain English. It is really helpful. You can word search it and find lots of things. You can find things like, for example, that you really should not be dumping stuff into a chat on Zoom. The meeting is also being held on the phone, which is actually the way I probably attend meetings. I can't see a chat. If I were blind, I would not be able to see a chat. And so you're not supposed to be using chat for that sort of thing. It also addresses questions like subcommittees and the ability for them to meet, which is pretty possible in a lot of ways. So I would just ask not only that you keep trying to staff to ask them what's legal and not legal, but just Google Open Meetings Act Handbook, State of Michigan, and read it for yourself regularly. It's not that difficult. As I said, you can word search sections in it, and it's really very understandable. You can't do things, as Mr. Lahannis noted, like using a Google Doc for team editing. That would be illegal. Secondly, I just want to emphasize the point that the point of this is not to be an oversight commission. It is to make a recommendation to City Council on what an oversight commission should look like. So I think if you could focus very specifically on that job of what the commission should look like, then you will get less bogged down in these very interesting questions like how many adopts are we making. Those are things that I believe the Oversight Commission should probably be empowered to do. But basically what you're trying to do is create a permanent commission that will do the kinds of work that we all care so much about. So the important thing is going to be to actually get to the point of having a commission formed. And your job is to recommend to the City Council what that commission should look like. But the City Council will actually be making the decision, not you. So it's really important that you provide as clear a guideline as you possibly can in terms of what you think is important. And focus in on the things you think are most important and help those preserve the City Council decision. Third, you asked the new chief his philosophy, which was very interesting to me to hear the answer to. However, I have lived in my neighborhood for about 20 years and I've been through 6 police chiefs.
it is really important that whatever gets created is created through timeless fashion. That is to say, it should not matter who the chief is. It should not matter what the chief philosophy is. What should matter to us is what this commission is empowered to do to protect the people of East Lansing and the people who come to East Lansing. And finally, I don't see anything in the Open Meetings Act that says that you need to have staff to do subcommittees. So I appreciate Mr. Johannes' point that staff is very busy. They definitely are, and there's no reason to overwhelm them. But I don't believe there's anything that says that sub-forum groups can't meet to discuss some ideas to bring forward to the group, and there's nothing that says they have to have staff to do that. Even if you were to meet in public, in other words, if you were to decide it did require Open Meetings Act coverage, you don't, I believe, have to have any staff member present. You do have to take minutes. The minutes is incredibly simple. And so somebody in the committee, subcommittee, can be empowered to view minutes and simply to provide the minutes and bring them forward if it turns out those that have to be done under the OMA. But I don't think you have to do it under the OMA if you're in sub-forum and they're not actually making policy to bring forward ideas. So those are the 4 points I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Drager, for your insight and questions and references to helping us out to do a better job. Is there any more comments or responses to the call? Commissioner Cedric.
I think that's a pretty important point that was made, that there needs to be some distinction between what we are trying to do in terms of establishing the Civilian Review Board. But some of that involves us having to have an understanding of police processes in general. So in order for us to say that the Oversight Commission is going to be able to engage in disciplinary actions against officers, then we have to have information from HR, if that's even possible as a collective bargaining issue. In order for us to say that the oversight is going to, the Oversight Commission is going to have oversight over any sort of early warning system as implemented by Chief Johnston, right? Then we have to know what's currently in place in terms of an early warning system and what data gets utilized in that system. So I'm sensitive to that time constraint, and I think it's an important point to maintain that distinction so that we're not going too far afield. But a lot of those are sort of laying the foundation for us creating the structure of the committee in terms of what it is capable of doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Cedric. Any other comments to the call? All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And then seconded by moved by Cedric, seconded by Commissioner Chris. Thank you all tonight. We are adjourned, and we will be meeting again. From what I understand, is going to be the 2nd. Is that correct?
26th.
26th. Thank you. 26th. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good to meet everybody.
Thank you. Wow, that was rough, Chuck Grigsby. Talk to you guys later. We are adjourned, so we are good.